Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name's Kevin McGreskin. I've been asked to just introduce the person who's chairing this panel. I was the former technical director at the Bahamas FA, so I've been asked to do this and introduce Oisin Roberts, who's, as I say, he's going to chair this panel conversation for you. Oisin's been with the Welsh FA for 25 years and in various capacities. He's now the technical director. He's also the assistant manager with the Welsh national team. He's done that for the past 6 years and taken them, you know, they've had an incredible period where they've went from 117th in the world to in the top 10. Been in the Euros last year, getting to the semi-final. So a fantastic time for Welsh football. Unfortunately, I'm Scottish. But I've known Oisin for quite a long time. I was very fortunate to go through their coach education system and achieve my UFA licence with the Welsh FA, and got a fantastic set of guys that's been led very well by the gentleman that's chairing this panel. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Oisin Roberts.
Thanks, Kev. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. You won't hopefully hear much of my voice because I'm here to facilitate. What we have is a tremendous wealth of experience here on the stage who are here to talk about their roles as technical directors in the main, but their experiences, and share those experiences with you. And we'll certainly open the floor as we go through the session. And if you've got any specific questions you may like to ask, then certainly there'll be an opportunity for you to do so. I'll just introduce them briefly because you'll get to know a lot more about them as they go through the discussion. Furthest to my left is the gentleman Tom Bayer. A lot of you will know Tom has extensive experience out in Japan in the main. Has been a technical coach over there for over 25 years. So a vast amount of experience in that part of the world, and is currently the technical advisor to the extremely busy Chinese Ministry of Education. Watch this space if you're not already in tune with what's going on out there. So a warm welcome to Tom. Sat next to Tom, to his right, is the technical director of Croatia, Romeo Jozak. Yeah, warm welcome for you, Romeo. Is as I say, the director of technique for the Croatian FA, and also has a PhD in soccer. He's already been busy out on the pitch, and he'll be straight out on the pitch after this one. So looking forward to his practical work as well during the week. Bernd Stober is our next gentleman. Bernd's just come off the pitch. Warm welcome to Bernd. Bernd is the head of coach education at C, B and A license with a DFB, with a German FA. He's coached the national teams in Germany for over 20 years and has been working for the DFB for over 30 years. So a great amount of experience that Bernd brings to the panel. No introduction to you guys, to the next gentleman. I played against him at collegiate level many years ago, and I think this is the closest I ever got to him. Fantastic playing career, as you know, for Tab Ramos. Great gentleman. 81 national caps for the national team. Played in the Olympics, 3 World Cups, and so on. As well, obviously, as playing in the MLS and abroad, playing in Mexico and with Real Betis in Spain. So a fantastic playing career. And transitioned that into his coaching career, making a successful transition now over quite a few years on the coaching side. US Soccer Youth Technical Director for the last 3 years, head coach of the under-20 national team, preparing now, of course, for the World Cup games coming up, and has coached in the last 2 World Cups at under-20 in Turkey in 2013 and New Zealand in 2017. And was also assistant coach for the US in the FIFA World Cup in Brazil in 2014. So warm welcome to Tab Ramos. Thank you, Tab. Next gentleman is Fred Lipka. He's the technical director at the MLS, in charge of youth development and players, and he's been in the role since August 2015. So I'm sure you'll have some questions, relevant questions for Fred this afternoon. Prior to that, obviously with his French background, working with several professional clubs in France, most recently before coming to the States, was as Academy Director for Le Havre. Welcome, Fred. And finally, the person closest to me on my left, Francois Blackard. Francois is the Technical Director of the French Federation, has been so for 6 years, was assistant prior to that under the experienced and the highly acclaimed Gérard Houllier, has been working for the Federation since 1999, has also been assistant manager of the national team, and with translation this afternoon, you'll just have to bear with us a little bit. Ronwald Nguyen, a gentleman to my right, is going to be helping Francois and making those translations directly to you. So a warm welcome also to Francois and to Ronwald. Okay. Thank you. So we'll get going and start talking about football, eh? So first of all, I'm going to throw it out to the panel. And the first one is, obviously, they've got different roles and responsibilities, even if it's within that technical director's role. So I just want them to explain what their current role entails. What is it? Because it can be very different from one association to another, from one club to another. So currently, within their role that they're working in, what is their responsibilities? What is their remit? And we'll start with Francois and then let you guys go across.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Le métier de directeur technique national est défini depuis très longtemps en France.
The task of the national director I defined since many years in France.
Il est également régi par l'État.
It's regulated by the state of France.
Donc, dans tous les sports, pratiquement, le métier repose sur les mêmes bases.
And it's the same task in all the sports in France.
En ce qui me concerne, il repose essentiellement sur 3 missions fondamentales.
For me, it's mainly 3 missions.
Le développement de la pratique pour tous.
Development of the grassroots football.
Le joueur, au travers du joueur, des clubs,
through the players, through the clubs,
et de l'organisation des compétitions.
and through competition organizations.
La deuxième mission, c'est toute la programmation du football d'élite.
And the second one is programmation of the elite football,
Tout le système de détection,
detection, scouting,
tout le système de formation des joueurs d'élite,
education of elite players,
jusqu'aux sélections nationales de jeunes.
until the national team's youth players.
La troisième, qui n'est pas la moins importante,
The third and not least,
c'est la formation des entraîneurs
education of coaches
à tous les niveaux,
through all levels,
du plus bas niveau jusqu'au plus haut niveau, pour répondre à la fois aux besoins des différents niveaux de club, mais aussi tous les besoins, toutes disciplines confondues, jusqu'au fitness, futsal, gardien de but, et ainsi de suite.
from grassroots to the top, but also through every kind of practice, from futsal, 5-5v5 and stuff.
Il y a une quatrième mission, qui est une mission d'accompagnement, à savoir c'est de manager et d'animer l'ensemble du système, c'est-à-dire notamment les cadres techniques nationaux et fédéraux, sélectionneurs, coach education, développeurs, aussi bien à l'échelon national qu'à l'échelon régional.
There are the fourth task, which is not the list, is being by the side of all the coaches, technical regional directors, and be by their side day to day.
Okay, thank you. It's going to be very, very quick because François was my mentor when I was a coach. And as soon as I took the job, it was roughly 1 year ago, he gave me very meaningful advice. And he told me, I mean, I'm going to repeat what he just said. 3 main missions: coaching education. At MLS, we are not in charge directly of coaching education, but we have to improve this area and to be sure our coaches can get the best coaching education pathway. So coaching education, and we create also a partnership with the French Federation to try to upgrade our coaches. The second aspect is for sure how to try to improve our competition in link also with US Soccer, which is in charge of to organize the competition, but my role is to guide our clubs to try to improve this very important area, because we have to have the best coaches, but also we have to play meaningful game and to play well. When I tell well, it means qualitative soccer. Because if we play too much and if we play in the wrong way, we couldn't develop the right level in terms of elite player. And the third aspect is how to develop what we call the elite pathway. So the elite pathway is how to put the best player in the best structure. Structure means for us club. So my job is how to create, once again with this important and actor, which is the federation, how to create in our clubs the best pathway, means facilities, how to improve the facilities, how to improve the coaching staff, how to improve everything in link with elite players. So I have also another very important role is how to try to with my people in New York, how to improve our rules to make maybe this integration easier over the next few years. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, it's an honor for me to be here with such a great panel. I know I just mentioned to Romeo before that anytime he has a session, I'm always watching, so I'll be there at the next one. Year after year, I know you've been coming for quite a few years, so it's always amazing to watch you do what you do. In terms of my role with US Soccer, my initial role, I'm Youth Technical Director. My initial role is to integrate and oversee our youth national teams, integrate them with the methods of our senior national team. At the same time, integrate our methods with the coaching education department. We just improved and hired new people in our coaching and education department, created new licenses and all those things, as well as our scouting department. Continue to develop our relationship with MLS. MLS has grown a lot in particular, over the last 10 years. So our relationship with MLS and making sure that we work together is really important, I think, for the future of our players. And then as well as working with US Soccer in terms of keeping our relationship with state associations, US Club Soccer, AYSO, and all the other organizations out there to continue to improve the game on a wide range across the country.
The technical director is not responsible for the results of our national team, but he is responsible for the results of our national team in the future, because he is the most important guy who has to prepare the future. He has to install all the plans which will help to get a better youth development. And especially in Germany, in a big football country, it is a very difficult job, because we have 26,000 clubs with about 100,000 teams. So that means that most of our teams are playing on grassroots level or amateur level. But he has also to integrate these areas into professional football. And on the other side, he has also to look for coach education, for elite youth football, for youth development in general. So all the aspects which will help us to develop the quality of football are his job.
First of all, thank you, Tab, for the compliments. I really appreciate that. It's always good to be back here. It's my 5th year as a presenter. Really enjoy, made many friends and many connections. I completely agree with Bernd about his comment. My job and my role as a technical director is primarily, let's say, to know who's going to be in the starting 11 in 2022 in Qatar World Cup. And I do, if they're all going to be healthy, of course, right? Subs as well and everything. But just to kind of generalize it, the department that I run is national teams, development, and competitions. I run all the men's national teams, all the women's national teams, all futsal national teams, development that goes into the area of development of the players on the county, regional, and national level. And competitions, which is the format of, let's say, at which age the kids are going to go play on full-size pitch, how many against how many are going to be playing at this age, with which ball, with so the format of competitions, which we find very important for the overall development. Pretty complex job, pretty responsible. You know, they say nobody's a prophet in their own backyard. I do have a feeling living that life back home. But okay, we do well as Croatia is a relatively small country. A lot of good coaches. I brought here 10 people literally with me from Croatia this time. The head of Academy of Education is here with me, assistants, coaches from the national teams as well. We really appreciate the event, and whenever I talk, also working as a technical committee member of UEFA and technical instructor, whenever we have a meeting in UEFA, I always try to pass the words how huge and big and well organized this is, and definitely a huge impact in the coaching world. So thank you.
Hello. I'm originally from New York, so I'm very honored to be the other American sitting up here on the panel, along with Tab. I spent most of my entire football career overseas in Asia, in Japan. I've been for 32 years as both a player and as a coach. And I'm currently a head technical advisor to the Chinese Ministry of Education, which is a daunting job in itself. If people do or don't know, but football has become compulsory. The government has created a policy to make football compulsory in schools. So there's a project it's called the 50,000 School Project to create and designate certain particular schools as football schools. And I work with the ministry advising on different strategies, mostly in the grassroots segment. That's where I've spent most of my career. So that's a little bit of what I do. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Tom. Thank you all for that. Right, let's go straight into talking about the football side of the game, if you like. Obviously, as a technical director or in your role, you perhaps have that responsibility to have your finger on the pulse, what's currently going on out there that impresses you. So if you look at the current game, current format, who's doing what, whichever country, club level, national level, up to you, what currently out there impresses you and why?
Well, again, I'm coming from a different vantage point because I'm coming from one of the least developed, probably, or the least developed country out of everybody on the panel here, where we've got much different challenges because we've got a populace, kind of a lost generation, we could say, of children that not only have not played football but are inactive in sports. One of the big problems and the big question that people ask about a country with 1.3 billion people is, why are they so bad at football? A couple of the reasons is one is it's a one-child policy. The other is that the educators look at sports as a distraction to education. So one of the strategies that we've put in place is because we have such a massive demographics there, 250 million children under the age of 14, of which 100 million are under the age of 6. So one of the strategies, key strategies, is really focusing on those parents of over 100 million kids under the age of 6, trying to educate the parents of very small children with the idea of, my whole philosophy has been is that when you look at the great footballing countries of the world and you look at what's happening with the very, very young children, I find that it's not so much on the coaching that's happening, it's more of what's happening under the cultures. And those cultures are very conducive to developing young players. And I sit here on the stage, not just as a professional coach, but I sit here on the stage as a father of 2 young boys that play football that are 8 and 10 years old in Japan. So anyway, it's a little bit different perspective of what we're doing there because you've got players that are or children who are being exposed to playing football. And if you think of what's the chronological or the technical age of these kids, well, what are you going to teach a 6-year-old and what are you going to teach a 16-year-old? They're both starting at the same vantage point. So what our focus is on, again, making the technical component the most important component so that we can start talking about the other parts of the game.
The primary idea of us in a federation is to analyze the situation in the world and what's going on now. There's definitely some countries that made a change. They adapted to the new style of football. When I say style, I mean the quickness and the speed of the game, the functionality of the game, having the team approach as opposed to maybe only individual approach, as we were actually good at in Croatia. So a few years back, we analyzed all these details and really looked into all these, when they say Barcelona school, okay, we sent people to Barcelona school couple of times we sent people to German schools, French schools, all the way around, even to Argentina, to see what's new, what's going on, what's happening. We've come to, let's say, 5 ground topics that would take us on and raise the whole development of the football, of the soccer. Number 1 is a good player. Number 2 is a good coach. Number 3 is a good program. Number 4 is a quality within the team, and number 5 is a quality within the league you compete in. So if you're missing at least one of these things, you're not going to get there. You need to have a good player. Obviously, we do have them. You need to have good coaches. We invest really greatly into good coaching. Program is something what you call curriculum. You don't have it, you have it. And number 4 and 5 is not easy to achieve, to have the equal or similar quality range within the team, of the team that you're coaching, and especially the league. Maybe that's going to be the biggest problem here in such a big country like US is, to actually have the league that's going to be equally good on every level, not only Major League Soccer, but on every level. So kids can every weekend have a really strong opponent, and we're really focusing on these things. And started with this change, started with this adaptation 6 years from now back, and let's say strategically taking the country, trying to be competitive. As I say, having the thought that we have 4.2 million people only, maybe just as much living outside of Croatia, quite a few in the States here as well. We're relatively doing well. But there's a huge passion in the coaches and the kids, really enormous passion, people to succeed. So this is pretty much it.
Yeah, also our starting point is the analysis of big football events, soccer events, so the European Cup, World Cup, and the Champions League. We are in a good position now in Germany, because we changed our whole youth development program about 10, 15 years ago. And we have a lot, we never had a time like this where we have a lot of youth players which play already football on a high level in the age of 18, 19, 20. But the problem which we see is that the development after this age group will not happen. They are already in the age of 20 on such a high level that there is no further development. So we have to think about what happens to the player in order to reach another further development. This is one aspect, and the other aspect, I think this is in all countries the same. We try to convince, especially our youth coaches, that if they want to prepare players for the future, for the real future, for adult football, they have to look for the individual quality of the players. A team, okay, if you are a coach of a youth team, it's okay that you try to win, but you have to have always in mind that the individual quality is the most important aspect for the future. And that is what we saw in every World Cup and in every European Cup. It is not the team strategy, it's not the basic formation, it is not the tactical behavior in defending and attacking. Mostly, the most decisive moment is the individual quality of one player. So that is why we try to convince our youth coaches. It's a very difficult job.
Okay, so it's obviously a little bit more difficult to add as we continue here down the line. But I think one of the things when you look at trends going into the future and where soccer has been going over the last, and I say a shorter period of time, maybe 3 to 5 years, is the role of analytics within the game. So all you guys that are out there who are coaches, you're starting to realize how more and more difficult it's becoming to become a coach. Analytics worldwide has taken a big role in the game now in terms of, it's not just, passing or, or shooting or that type of stuff, but as well as it's having, where's I going with that? As well as having the ability to figure out what specific players are doing on the field and how to break down other teams. I know that, because of this, the role of coaching education is becoming more and more important always. And so for us in particular in this country, as I were to, when I look at countries like Germany or France and see how they use analytics for the benefit of their players and improving their game, including combining that with their high performance department. So when you talk about analytics, not just talking about the passing on the field, but also the physical component of it. When you're becoming a coach and you go through the coaching education now, it's becoming more and more difficult to learn all those things. So I think those are the two things that I would add in terms of, the game going to another level worldwide. Obviously, soccer is a sport that's the most popular in the sport, continues to in the world and continues to grow not just here but worldwide. And so I think analytics is one part of it, and I think coaching education is becoming more and more important.
I'm going to talk about the game. I think, to me, everything starts with the game, and we have to. It's my mission and it's my mojo. What I want is to transmit the capacity for our coach to understand the high-level constraints. The game is today how to solve problem under high level of time, constraint, emotion, and physical opposition. So in the training process, we have to transfer this vision on the field. And my role, and I think it's very interesting in the US, because we have to improve our capacity to transmit and to transfer knowledge to our kids with meaning and tactical meaning. Soccer is not only first touch, one touch playing, it's why, where, how, and when. So it's how to integrate all these parameters and we call that the periodization, how to transfer in the training process all these parameters to give the knowledge to the kids, and after they could solve the problem by ourselves. We had also a great evolution in France in terms of quality of soccer and linking all these aspects as soon as the kids are young. We talk about tactic, but simple tactic with 2 or 3 players, and to link the technical aspect and also the capacity to solve problems in a very little space. To me, as a future question we have to reply over the next few years. It's very simple. I think soccer is a simple game, but sometimes it's very complicated to transfer the knowledge. So this is my objective, and with our coach, it's how to improve the training process.
En ce qui concerne l'analyse, si vous voulez, l'idée pour des nations comme les nôtres, c'est d'abord de nous projeter à 10 ou 20 ans et d'essayer de deviner un petit peu ce que deviendra le football dans quelques années. Il y a un certain nombre de paramètres dont il faut tenir compte.
Concerning a country as France, our main task is try to have a forecast about what will become the game in the 10 or 20 years.
Il y a un certain nombre de paramètres dont il faut tenir compte et en dehors de l'évolution de ce que l'on constate, c'est aussi l'évolution de nos sociétés.
So there are several things to take into consideration, and among them, one of the most important things is to have the evolution of our society.
Donc nous essayons de faire comprendre à nos publics, notamment nos publics d'entraîneurs,
We try to explain to our public, especially our coaches,
que les enfants qu'ils ont sous la main ne sont très différents de ce qu'ils étaient eux-mêmes.
that the kids they have and their coaching, their training are very different than the kids they were on their time.
Et on peut penser qu'il en est de même pour les entraîneurs.
And we think it's the same for the coaches.
Les jeunes entraîneurs qui viennent aujourd'hui dans nos formations n'ont pas le même mode de pensée, voire de fonctionnement, que les plus anciens.
So the young coaches that are going now into our education program don't think the same way that the holders have at their time.
Qu'est-ce qui nous semble important? Je dirais c'est d'abord le jeu.
So what's very important is first the game.
Un enfant vient pour jouer au football, vient pour prendre du plaisir.
The kids come to play football and to have fun.
Et donc ce qui nous semble important, c'est qu'ils comprennent le jeu.
So for that, the first thing is for him to understand the game.
Donc c'est ce qu'expliquait Fred tout à l'heure, c'est que nous avons mis en question, à l'image d'autres nations, cet aspect-là, et à savoir que tout part du jeu.
So this is what Fred explained before. We are consider our position, and the first thing is the kids to understand the game.
Donc c'est une approche relativement globale qui prend en compte à la fois le jeu et puis bien entendu l'évolution du joueur.
So it's a global approach that takes into consideration first the game and then the evolution of the player.
Nous avons comme principe de dire que il y a des étapes d'apprentissage
There are several steps in the learning process,
en fonction des âges.
depending of the age.
Il faut que les compétitions correspondent à ces étapes.
The competition has to fit at these several steps.
Mais au-delà de ça, le jeu, il est le même pour tout le monde. Et on peut penser qu'un enfant de 8-10 ans devra aborder le football de la même façon qu'un adulte en termes d'approche du jeu, avec les mêmes règles, puisque le jeu a les mêmes règles, les mêmes principes. On a le ballon, on n'a pas le ballon. C'est toujours la même chose.
So no matter how old it is, what is important is that he has the same approach, and we can say in another world that even if he's 8 years old, that he's a senior, he has to get the same approach of the game.
Dans cette approche globale, il y a 2 ou 3 choses qui méritent d'être définies. C'est d'abord ce qu'on appelle le parcours du joueur.
So in this global approach, what we try to define is first the way of the joueur, the player pathway, background.
Donc la question est de savoir en fait qu'en fonction des différentes étapes d'âge, qu'est-ce que l'on peut faire et qu'est-ce que l'on ne peut pas faire avec chaque individu.
So it's knowing that depending of how old he is, what can we do or what we can't do with this player.
Et les parcours partent tous sur le même modèle, que sont, en France, on appelle ça les écoles de foot, on peut appeler ça les académies.
So it's always the same model. In France, we call it football school or academies.
Ça peut se faire en club ou à l'école aussi.
It can be in schools or in a club.
Mais à partir de ce socle-là, qui est l'apprentissage de base,
So based on this learning process,
le parcours du joueur va aller vers un football plus loisir,
he can go into a fun practice
le plaisir de pratiquer la compétition
or competition practice
ou le haut niveau.
or high-level elite competition.
Donc ce qui nous semble important, comme le font certaines nations, c'est pour chaque étape, en fonction de chaque objectif, c'est de définir ce que l'on peut faire et ce que l'on ne peut pas faire.
So, such as several countries, what's important for us in France is depending of how we want to play, the game we want to do, to define where he has to go.
Mais à tous les niveaux, du plus jeune jusqu'au professionnel,
But at all levels, to grassroots to professional level,
c'est le jeu qui prime et qui donne du sens, aussi bien à l'entraînement qu'à l'envie de pratique du joueur.
so it's game first and what makes sense during the training sessions and competitions.
Donc l'idée pour nous, comme pour d'autres, c'est la méthode que l'on essaye de développer, c'est à partir du jeu de développer en fait tous les outils qui permettront aux joueurs d'être de plus en meilleurs, si vous voulez, de mieux en mieux, en fonction de ses aspirations, et de dire, ben voilà, il y a une partie, pour être bon dans le jeu, il faut être bon techniquement, puis après, il faut être bon athlétiquement, il y a la partie mentale, ainsi de suite, et on va développer un peu en spirale pour faire progresser le joueur en permanence.
So I have to do the same move, otherwise you won't understand.
Et
So
ça
our
remet
global
automatiquement.
methodology is that starting from the game, you start and improve your way about physically, tactically, and then going on, and the higher you go, and the methodology change, but the approach of the game is the same, but we always start from the game.
Mais le sens, il est toujours donné par le jeu.
All things we do are inspired by the game first.
Voilà. La grosse difficulté, ce que voulait dire Fred aussi, et c'est des discussions que l'on peut avoir, c'est que ça remet aussi beaucoup en question notre conception de l'entraînement.
So the main difficulties and main problem we have is we have to reconsider our conception of the trainings,
Les méthodes utilisées,
the methodology we use,
la pédagogie,
our pedagogic approach,
voilà, et y compris la relation avec le joueur,
and the relation between the coach and the player,
toujours en fonction de son âge.
always depending of how old he is.
Thank you very much, Francois, Ronald. Okay, I'm mindful of time, and I want to make it as applicable and relevant to you guys as is possible. So I think this is an opportunity for us to open it to the floor. And then we've got a mic, so Kev's in charge. He's going to throw it to you. You've got to catch it. So it's part of your goalkeeper training. If it's a back pass, you've got to control it with your foot. Can't pick it up. But and then just please give your name, explain who you're with, which club, what you do, and then and ask your question to the panel. We've got a gentleman, hands up over here. Yes, Kev? Lofted pass? Perfect. Great weight.
Over here. All right. Can you hear me? All right. My name is Eduardo. I'm the director of coaching for Rose City Futsal in Portland, Oregon. My question comes down to futsal and understanding the influence that futsal might be having in the approach of you as professional football coaches and the impact that futsal is causing all over the world. How does it impact your training, your philosophy, and things like that?
Okay, who would like to take the question first? Yes.
Oui, moi je veux bien répondre, mais très vite, parce que notre nation n'est pas une nation de futsal. Nous sommes en train d'y réfléchir, c'est-à-dire qu'on a un peu de retard.
So François will answer. Thanks for your questions. Very quickly, because France is not a big nation of futsal, but
Moi,
we're trying to think about it.
Je suis convaincu que le futsal est un outil fantastique pour le football traditionnel.
So he's deeply convinced that futsal is a wonderful tool for traditional football.
Alors pour différentes raisons,
For several reasons.
je vais en donner 2 ou 3, vous en avez certainement plus que moi.
So he will give us 3, but you may have more than him.
C'est une discipline que je juge totalement éducative.
So it's fully educational
Et c'est
practice.
c'est une discipline qui offre une densité très importante dans le jeu,
So there is a lot of density into the game, during the game.
qui oblige les joueurs à répondre très rapidement à des situations tactiques de base très denses.
So players have to react very quickly in a tactical situation in a short surface.
Et compte tenu de l'évolution du football traditionnel,
Based on the evolution of traditional football,
où la densité et la vitesse et autre chose sont des paramètres très importants,
where density and speed are things very important.
on peut penser qu'on retrouvera dans le football traditionnel beaucoup de situations du football de base,
So
du futsal, pardon.
we can expect that in traditional football we will face a lot of more and more of these situations.
Nous avons peu de joueurs de futsal,
We have
mais
a few futsal players,
mais il y en a qui ont déjà fait le transfert, qui sont partis d'un futsal qui est très amateur en France
but some already transfer from amateur futsal
et qui ont réussi, qui deviennent professionnels dans le football traditionnel à 20 ans.
who become professional players now in France at 20 years old.
Voilà. Après, nous, on y voit un autre intérêt, c'est qu'on est, par rapport à des nations comme les États-Unis, nous sommes très en retard sur le football féminin.
So there is another interest that compared like a country like the US,
Et
we
on
are
peut-
very late in women's football.
Nous sommes un pays latin.
We are a Latin country.
Et on peut penser que le futsal peut être un outil pour amener les jeunes filles à jouer au football parce qu'il est probablement plus sécurisant que le football traditionnel.
So our thoughts, it's like maybe futsal can be a way to bring women's players to football because it feels like safer and can bring into traditional football.
No. Anyone want to say or add anything?
In Germany, we have no tradition in futsal. We installed a national team about 3 months ago, and we had problems to find players, especially good players. But I believe that futsal can be a good preparation for individual and group tactical behavior because it's close to small-sided games, which we want to play our players. So I think it can be a good part of traditional football.
And here in the U.S., what we've done at the elite level with our development academy, we've implemented sort of a mandatory rule to have everybody play futsal. We really believe that it's a great tool for development, especially at the younger level.
Yeah, and we do likewise in Wales, winter training when they, particularly fields. We've had instances of children not being able to play for 12, 13 weeks on grass pitches. So, the last 3 years we've implemented futsal as the game over the winter months. And so it's integrated into the traditional sport, but obviously it has its own specific pathway as well. So players can choose. Good, yes, Kev?
Firstly, I apologise if I've missed something and you've already answered the question,
No problem.
or I didn't quite hear you. But 2 questions. The first one is somebody, and I couldn't quite see who it was, mentioned that you take your developmental pathway from the national team or what the national team are doing in terms of their tactics and their shape and formation and build them up to that approach. But I think it was Klinsmann quite recently, actually, and I think it's quite a general consensus that you don't base your you don't base your team around your tactics, you base your tactics around your team and what they're capable of doing. If that's the general consensus, why do you have your youth team mirror your national team when at any moment the national team tactics could change? And the second question is, it's quite just a brief one, is there still a subjective or qualitative approach to talent identification, or is it just purely objective in what you see in numbers, essentially?
Thank you for the question.
I mentioned the integration between the national team and the youth national team. So I never mentioned tactics when it comes to, in terms of integration. I think we have a U.S. soccer way, and that begins with the root of our player development, which is the player. And so we're looking for a certain type of player. What the integration between our program becomes is more on a method of working. How do we train? How do we report to training camps? You know, what do we eat? What's our nutrition? All those things go into our high performance department. All those things go into the integration of our players. Now, because we've changed the senior national team coach, we couldn't possibly determine what our youth national teams are doing only specific to our senior national team coach, because then every time you change the senior national team coach, then you have to change all your teams and the way you play. And so our youth national teams are continuing to do the work that we've put in front of them. And so what do we want to see? What do we want a number 7 to look like? What do we want a number 11 to look like? What do we want a number 6 to look like? That doesn't change. What changes is at the top possibly the way the teams work, so that when we move a player up, whether it's the U17s to the U19s or the 19s to the 20s, or an under 20 player to the senior national team, he knows the method of work. He knows how he reports. He knows what the trainings are like. He knows what are the important core areas that you have to be familiar with, and that's whether it's at the hotel or anywhere else. In terms of the way we play, we don't mirror with the youth national teams what our senior team does, because obviously our senior national team is in the business of winning games every week. On the youth national teams, we want to develop players so that individually each one of them can someday play for the senior national team. And so it's a completely different approach. Yes, we obviously like to get results, so we'd like for our U17s to go to the World Cup. We'd like for under 20s to go to the World Cup, but it's not so much because we're thinking every time we have to go to the World Cup and win it. Although we'd like to do that, we play the games to win them. It's more to give the players the experience so that they're prepared when the time comes to go to the senior national team. I'm not sure if that answers your question, or so it's not. So if, say, you know, we had Jurgen before, we have Bruce now. So because Jurgen liked to play a 3-5-2, then everybody changes to 3-5-2. That's not the way it works. What we're looking for players, and so in general terms, I can tell you that all our youth national teams ideally would like to play in a 4-3-3. That's a very easy way to develop players. It's a very easy way to identify players. But you also depend on the players that you have in your age group. So you all as coaches here would like to play a certain way, but you can only play according to the players that you have in front of you. That benefits those players. And so I hope that answers the question.
Tab, the talent ID side in terms of how objective or how subjective that can be, could you just touch on how you guys currently do it?
As far as what?
The talent identification, identifying your players, you know, that.
Okay, we need a lot of time for that. So our talent identification, we have 12 technical advisors nationwide who manage over roughly 160 scouts nationwide. Our top priority is a development academy. That's where we start. But we try not to have any player go unnoticed. And so we're constantly out there talking to people, being in places, being at tournaments, whether they're tournaments that are played through the Development Academy, which we encourage, or whether it's any other tournament, because we believe players can be found anywhere. You know, this country is so big that it's very difficult to find, you know, players everywhere. So it's hard to find every single player. But what I can tell you that over the last 3 or 4 years, our scouting program that doesn't, by the way, it's not only in the U.S., so we have scouts overseas. We have scouts in Europe, in Germany, we have in Mexico, we have in other places. I think what's important is that our scouting network has a very good relationship with the youth national teams. Our technical advisors become part of the youth national team staffs when we travel, so that they can see not only what the top players are doing together, but what our competition looks like. Because if we only have scouts who can be in a random place in the US looking for players, of course, you look for certain techniques at the younger age groups, but when those players are playing in certain teams and developing in a certain way, we also have to have the players who have the physical ability to be able to compete at an international level. And it's important that our technical advisors who are leading the way in different regions have an idea of what international competition looks like at every age group, not just at the top.
Great, thank you. Yes, Ben.
Talent identification, we are still looking for a good way to identify the right players. And we very often are on the wrong side. Some examples of my players when I was a youth national coach that shows you that different ways leads to the top. For example, Thomas Müller was a good player in the age of under 15 and 16, and then he disappeared, and he came back as a boy of 2021, best scorer in the World Cup. Then we had Mesut Özil. The first time that he was good enough for our youth national teams, was in the age of 18. He wasn't identified as a talent in the age of 14 or 15. Toni Kroos, from the very beginning, in the age of 13, 14, he was always a top player. And when you look to Mats Hummels, our central defender, he never played in a youth national team. So a lot of ways are possible, and that is why you have to find a way that each talent has a chance to be scouted anytime, anywhere, in any age. So I think this is the best way to do it.
Okay, just quickly, our experience, we have 100,000 registered players in Croatia. That's pretty much it. So we can't allow ourselves to fail on every single talent there is. And before I came to TD of the Federation, I was the Academy Director of Dinamo Zagreb Academy for 7 years, and I used to, I did say that a couple of times to the audience even here, I think a few years back. I had an argument with my boss every once in a while, you know what, don't give me this talk, like if they can teach a seal in a circus to juggle the ball, it means you guys down there at the academy can teach anything, anyone, you know? So I'm like thinking that could be a good point, right? And then okay, but then I come back tomorrow, right? I need some time to think it over. Have you ever seen a giraffe in circus to juggle the ball? Have you seen a chicken in a circus to juggle the ball? Have you seen a snake in a circus? Here we go on and on. So if they can teach a bear to ride a bicycle, have you ever seen a seal riding a bicycle? That means there's a genetical barrier. There's a genetical barrier, and it's really present, and it's really rough. So it's up to our ID assistant to detect what are those conditions, what are those requirements, what are those criteria that are genetically determined, and look for them. Because if this guy's got everything and he's slow, he's always going to be slow. If this guy's got everything, but he's not brave, he's a coward, if you know what I mean, he's always going to be like that. So we're going to look for these things, and as I say, we have 100,000 people we can't allow to miss. It's a really responsible job. You've got to define those details and criteria, the things that could be developed, like aerobic capacity, like muscles, like we know those things. Okay, we're going to work on those, but those other things can be. So that's why it's so important to actually detect what are the ID criteria quite well. Thank you.
Hi.
Works? Okay, there you go. My name is Paul Guillos. I come for the San Francisco area. I'm the director at Kiki 365. It's a soccer organization. My question is a follow-up what previously was mentioned. So what do you, after you identify those players, after your scouts identify those players, how do you take these scout players to the next level? What's the preparation, technically, physically, in your own eyes? How do you take these players to the next level, whether it's a national team level, or how do you select these players to the next level?
Yeah.
Your question is very important because what you said means what means talent. What means talent and how to establish an assessment base to scout in a best way our future talent. And I don't know if you agree or not, but in soccer, it cannot be first the physical aspect. We have to look first for kids which are able to solve technically and tactically a problem. So each country is different, and we had to solve some mental issue in France with our player, and France had decided to put first mental aspect. Mental aspect means a kind of ethic when you are player commitment. I think in the US we don't have this issue. I think our kids are great. Our kids want to train. There are a lot of enthusiasm to train. I think here we need to rebalance the criteria to be more soccer oriented. How to give the opportunity to the little kids to play, how to allow him time, how to try to avoid, to eliminate the non-mature kids, and the PHV, peak eye of velocity, is very, very important in the future to try to not killing this young talent, which sometimes don't allow us to win the game. So your question is tremendously important. We have a large base to work with in terms of amount of player. The criteria, it's easy to. What we say is, with my former mentors, is it's easy to build an athlete, but it's difficult to develop a soccer player. So the first parameter, I think we have to decide to set up are technique and tactic and strong point. Then, if we enlarge this base, it will be easy after for TAB to have one of the great team in the world.
And I would say I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oui, bon, je vais poursuivre un petit peu dans ce sens-là. Je n'ai pas répondu à la première question, à la question précédente. Simplement, on a deux ou trois constats. On a fait 2 ou 3 constats par rapport aujourd'hui à toutes les banques de données qu'on peut avoir.
Based on the observation we made on our data.
Une chose est sûre, c'est pour nous, en France, on estime qu'avant 17 ans, on ne sait rien d'un joueur.
For us in France, before 17 years old, we know nothing from the players.
Alors, je pense qu'en termes de démarche, c'est déjà important de le savoir.
So for us, it's very important to know that.
Personne ne peut jurer qu'un joueur de 13-14 ans va devenir un futur grand joueur, et Bert l'a dit tout à l'heure.
No one can say that a player of 13 or 14 years old will become a great player.
Il faut être très prudent sur la progression des individus.
We have to be very careful about protection of individualities.
Parce qu'elle repose sur de multiples caractéristiques.
Because it's based on several criteria.
Qui sont quelquefois difficiles à analyser.
Which are very difficult to analyze.
Voilà, donc, nous, on a pris la décision depuis plusieurs années de faire un système de détection large.
So since several years, we have decided to have a very large scope of detections, scouting.
Globalement, de 13 ans à 17 ans.
So from 13 to 17.
Où on est dans la remise en question permanente, et on brasse.
So we reconsider systematically, automatically.
Et chaque fois le principe, c'est chaque fois qu'on trouve dans les régions, à l'échelon local.
So each time that we find in a regional
un joueur qui présente non pas un talent mais un certain potentiel.
So players that have not a talent but a potential.
On essaye de l'amener tranquillement vers des structures qui vont lui permettre de s'épanouir.
So we try to be by his size and to bring him into our structure that will let him grow slowly.
Globalement, un meilleur entraîneur.
So globally, a better coach.
Des meilleures installations.
With better structures.
Un peu plus d'entraînement.
And more training sessions.
Et puis l'idée, c'est de le laisser progresser.
And the goal is to let him improve.
Les sélections, pour revenir à l'idée des sélections, les sélections de jeunes, en France comme dans beaucoup de pays, c'est simplement un apport de formation supplémentaire international qui permet aux joueurs de se bonifier. C'est presque, on considère que les sélections sont des accélérateurs de bagages.
So back to the topic about youth national teams, we consider that youth national team is just a way to have more experience in the international level and to get faster to the top level with more, we say, luggage with us and be better tools.
Fred l'a dit, mais je pense que c'est dépendant des cultures aussi de chaque pays. Mais nous, on a ressenti ce besoin-là. C'est qu'aujourd'hui, tout notre système de détection et d'accompagnement des joueurs repose avant tout sur leur état d'esprit. C'est-à-dire un joueur, il a envie de s'investir ou pas de s'investir.
So Fred told it before, but it can be very different from country to another. But in France, we have considered that was the most important thing is about the mentality of the player first.
Il a envie de s'approprier l'activité, les exigences de l'activité.
So he wants to get into the activity, the game, and all the requirements that are involved.
Mais après, la meilleure méthode, c'est le travail.
But then the best methodology is to work out.
Le travail.
Work out, and work out again.
Il y a des joueurs qui paraissent avoir plus de talent à 17-18 ans. Bernd a fait tout à l'heure allusion à certains joueurs que évidemment on connaît parce qu'on se rencontre souvent dans les équipes de jeunes. C'est pas forcément celui qui paraît avoir le plus de talent qui va faire carrière à l'arrivée.
So Bert refers to some very talented players, 17, 18 years old. They were very talented, but at the end, it's not necessarily them that came out of that pocket.
Mais il y a toujours des joueurs qui nous surprennent, sur lesquels on parierait pas $1 ou €1.
Well, we have some players that were surprising. We won't bet $1 or €1.
Et qui font des carrières fantastiques parce qu'ils ont développé autre chose.
Who made wonderful careers because they developed other skills.
L'état d'esprit est important et la deuxième chose, c'est toujours pareil, c'est l'intelligence de jeu. Comme tout à l'heure a dit Fred, c'est la capacité qu'a le joueur à réagir aux situations, la capacité qu'il a à développer le jeu, à s'adapter au jeu, et ainsi de suite.
So mentality is very important. The second thing is the intelligence of the game, his ability to resolve problems and to adapt himself to some situations.
Ça veut dire qu'on considère que l'aspect technique, l'aspect athlétique sont au service du jeu.
So we consider that the athletics and tactics are here to serve the game.
Ouais. Nous considérons que faire d'un joueur de foot intelligent, bon techniquement, un athlète, c'est pas quelque chose de très difficile.
So we consider that it's easy to have a player smart and very with tactical skills to become an athlete. It's easy.
Parce que les footballeurs sont des joueurs complets.
Because football needs complete skills.
Endurants, mais pas trop. C'est pas des marathoniens.
That can last when they run, but they're not doing marathon.
Rapides, mais c'est pas Usain Bolt.
They're fast, but they're not Usain Bolt.
Voire éventuellement puissants, mais ce sont pas des footballeurs américains ou des joueurs de ce type-là.
So they're strong, but they're not tackle football players.
Donc c'est le sens que l'on donne à tous les niveaux et les sélections nationales sont dans ce sens-là. L'avantage que l'on a, c'est que le système est continu et il n'est pas cloisonné par différentes structures. C'est-à-dire qu'on a la main sur tout le système, ce qui est important, football, amateur, professionnel, formation.
So this is our philosophy from the grassroots to our youth national teams. And one of the assets we have is that there is no separation between each step. It's really a smooth process from the youth to the professional level.
Et que tous les joueurs qui interviennent, tous les entraîneurs qui interviennent sur ce système d'élite,
and all these coaches of this elite program
sont des gens qui sont formés par nous
are trained by the French Football Federation
sur le concept de la fédération.
On the same concept.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mindful of time, we'll have one more question because some of the guys have got to go onto pitch-based again. So we'll just have one. You've got one here, sir?
I wanted, before we move on to the next question, to
Sorry, Tom.
answer one thing just real quick, because I think one of the things that you were asking was about how do we identify, a random player gets identified somewhere around the country. And so we have scouts all throughout the country, and when somebody is identified either by our scout or someone who knows our scout, that name goes into a database of players. Then that player is followed, and then the initial next step would be for that player to be invited into a regional training center. And that's whether that player plays in the development academy or in any club in the country. So that's the initial step. And then once we see how the player does in the regional training center, then he would get an invite possibly to one of the youth national teams.
Thanks, Tab. Okay, last question.
Yeah, David DeRico, former captain of the U.S. national team. I had the great honor of playing against Pelé and Cruyff, Beckenbauer, Carlos Alberto, and all those gentlemen. And Tom, I've been following your methodologies and everything you're doing with your book, you know, Soccer Starts at Home. What you've done, it's taken you 20 years in Japan, now you're moving into China. How are you taking what you've established, that incredible success of the 2011, where the women won the World Cup with a tsunami, an earthquake, and a nuclear meltdown? they were able to work through all of that, win the championship, get in the final against US last round in 2015. How are you taking that into not only China, and what kind of results are you seeing? And how can your methodology apply also to America to provide an environment where players are going to be creative and help make geniuses for us?
That's a very long question. That's a very long answer, but I'll just make a couple of comments. As an American living outside of America for 32 years, and the inconvenient truth, so to speak, is that as I look at American soccer, is that the reality is that we don't produce good enough technical players in this country. That's the reality of it. And when you look at the percentage of kids that are dropping out playing the game, 38.5% of kids don't make it to the age of 7 in this country. Another 50% drop out by the age of 10. That's a massive, massive problem. And the gap between the very best players, and this is what we changed in Japan, was that basically when I went there in the 80s, and fast forward now, the gap between, when I'm talking about children, the gap between the very best players and the worst players, we closed. The gap between the best player, the 8-year-old here in America, and the worst is the Pacific Ocean. Have to fix that. You know, and you've got coaches here that want to play the Barcelona way, they want to play the Ajax way. The kids can't transfer the ball from the right foot to the left. They can't do a simple wall pass or an overlap. Fix that. You've got 23.7 million children under the age of 6. Think about that. What are you doing for that age group? And that's my comment, because I know that everybody has to go.
Thank you. Okay, well, thanks. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks. Thank you very much, everyone. It's not working. Okay, done. Thank you, guys. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Romeo.
Thank you.
See you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well done. Tom, excellent. Thank you.
I will be in America until the 18th.
Yeah. Let's do a few tests, measure the outcome.